Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Street Fighter 2010, The Final Fight, brought to us by Capcom. It is implied in the North American version of the game you're playing as Ken Masters, the Ken character from the Street Fighter series, whereas in the Japanese version the character is named Kevin Stracker. Due to this confusion, many people find Street Fighter 2010 just a real anomaly in the Street Fighter series, trying to figure out exactly where to place it in the overall storyline, but officially, it technically is not a part of the Capcom Street Fighter series. Street Fighter 2010 is a very unique game overall. Instead of just being a typical side-scrolling action game, it has a few different elements, kind of similar to the Street Fighter series, where it's mostly a one-on-one situation with a lot of the bosses in the game, with some levels having some platforming and other elements. So here we go with Street Fighter 2010, The Final Fight for the NES. When we begin the game, we're going to be starting off with our storyline for the game, and remember, this is the story for the North American version of the game, with the Japanese version being quite different. Now that we know the North American story, the Japanese version is very different, with you playing as a police officer trying to stop these parasites taking over the planet. When you start off the level, you'll see your main character and the target of whatever you have to destroy in the upcoming level. Whatever that target is your main goal. There are other enemies in each level, but your main goal will be that particular enemy. When you first gain control of your character, you want to go around and destroy a few things that are hanging around the walls that contain possible power-ups. Every 2 power-ups, you'll gain an extra thing of strength. The problem is, every time you take a hit, you'll lose one of these bars of strength. But your main goal is to avoid taking damage and get that power bar up as quickly as you can. The first level enemy is pretty simple, and we'll actually fight him multiple times. You want to destroy a couple of the flying things towards you to summon him, and then mash the attack button either holding up, or facing straight at him in order to destroy him. Once you destroy a boss, you'll have a limited time to enter a portal. The game pulls no punches and jumps you right into another boss battle. This guy basically attacks you by swinging directly at you. He'll sometimes go straight up into the air to try to avoid your own attacks, and when he lands, be careful standing right in front of him, because they'll throw his giant mace ball out at you. Your main goal is to, of course, get on the same plane with him or below him and keep mashing the attack button until he drops. After he drops, the open bar will completely fill up at the bottom, and the portal will open, and you have a limited time to get to the portal before it ends up closing, and you end up losing a life and have to repeat the level. It's one of those weird things about this game, but it definitely keeps you on your toes the entire time. The next level is a little bit different, with a scrolling-like atmosphere that you'll have to avoid trying to accidentally fall into pits or get squashed by the screen as it scrolls. Since the first 2 levels were just straight up action of fighting the bosses, it's a big change of pace and will take a little bit of getting used to. For your attacks, you do have multiple different directions you can attack. Of course, straight, and you can also hold the up button to attack straight up, but if you hold the down button, you'll do a kick up in the air, which sends a kind of a diagonal attack straight up into the air. This will allow you to hit enemies that are at a diagonal direction away from you. You can also use this ability to attack enemies that if you would normally attack straight, you wouldn't be able to hit them, but by doing this, you'll just barely be able to clip them. The hardest thing, honestly, about the game, though, is getting used to how your attacks work and what attack would be best for the opportunity that you currently have. The platforms are a lot of times not even with where the boss ends up stopping. So you'll have to kind of maneuver yourself and kind of figure out what is the best spot for you to stand in order to get your couple of hits in. Keeping your health and mainly your power up is a big part of being able to defeat the bosses. So while sometimes it may seem better to kind of run in and do some massive amount of attacks, but you end up risk getting hit, usually I prefer to kind of stay back a little bit and to pick my spots more wisely. If you quickly hit back and the jump button, you'll do a backflip. The backflip allows you to jump pretty high up on the screen and can also protect you from a lot of different fire patterns from a lot of the enemies in the game, since you jump up so high and also jump away. You're going to be wanting to get used to this backflip at different times to help you out. For the next boss, he starts off by summoning a whole lot of things that fall from the sky. You want to jump up and avoid the one he throws at you, and then keep mashing the attack button as the ones fall all around you with a little gap in between each one so you can avoid getting squashed. When he gets to the opposite side, we're going to keep attacking over and over again until we're able to drop him and open up the portal. In between a lot of levels of the game, you'll have these weird screens where you'll either sometimes just open up a portal right away, or have to defeat enemies. As you'll notice, when you defeat the enemies in this area, they drop little glowing balls, and when you pick them up, it gives you a little bit of your open meter down below. Once you are able to get enough of those glowing balls to fill up the open meter, the portal will open up and you'll be able to move on. For the next level, the boss will spawn right above you, and what you'll want to do is jump up here and start chasing him down a little bit. Where these enemies land is a little bit random, so you will have to always be ready and prepared to move in case an enemy ends up doing a different pattern than you're expecting. Sometimes you may be expecting him to jump over you, and instead he ends up landing directly on you. So always be on a kind of a platform that you can quickly get off of by holding down in the jump button to drop down to a platform below. You of course want to be careful not to do this during certain situations where you may end up falling into a pit or land directly on top of an enemy. You have to travel to different planets in the game, going through a series of levels and kind of defeating a final boss of that planet before moving on. For example, that boss that we just defeated allows us to move on to the next planet. The layouts for each of the planets are a little bit different, including what you end up breaking to collect different power-ups. Early on in a level, if the screen of course isn't scrolling, and you've gotten hit a few times in the previous level, you may want to look around a bit of exploring just to make sure that you can kind of refill that power meter up some. For the first part here though, we're going to be destroying all these flying machines until we destroy enough of them to get the open bar full, and then drop into the portal. The portals always spawn in the same location, so playing the game multiple times, you'll be able to figure out where the portal will spawn after defeating whatever boss or the certain amount of enemies that you need to get rid of. The next area is very similar in design to the previous one, except these screens start scrolling upwards, instead of scrolling left to right. The game does a nice good job of mixing up the different gameplay elements of some of the levels to make sure that the game doesn't get too monotonous. When you're hanging on a wall, or for example one of these pillar-like things, sometimes you'll be able to actually go from left to right on the pillar itself and go to the opposite side, but the problem with it is while you're hanging you can only attack behind you. So if an enemy is directly in front of you, you'll have to try to jump away from them, or just hope they don't run directly into you while you're trying to climb up. While climbing up here, you want to avoid the flying enemies coming up at you. The good thing about these guys is they actually do work like a platform as well, as long as you land directly on top of them. But for the most part, you're going to want to try to just avoid them. You're going to have to make a large leap and actually climb up the waterfall as it's moving upwards. Of course, as you're climbing it, it's trying to pull you down if you do let go of the up button at any point. The hardest part really about this whole area is keeping your health up, because while you're climbing upwards, enemies of course will appear pretty much out of nowhere as the screen does scroll up. Thankfully there are some power-ups along the way a little bit so you can replenish some of that before you end up reaching the exact top. When you do reach the top though, it's time to fight the boss. This weird plant guy, after you attack his body a few times, it will break, in which case he will end up flying around like a saucer around the room, in which case you can still end up attacking him. Eventually, after flying around a bit, he will land again, giving you opportunity to straight up attack again. Overall, one of the more simple bosses that we've battled so far in the game, but a little bit annoying because of the way he flies around. When he's destroyed, jump into the portal and we'll move on to the next area. After landing in one of those weird techno-like abysses, just, well, wait a few seconds and the portal will open up and you can jump in and you're ready to fight the next target. This time it's another one of those ones where you have to destroy a lot of a certain amount of target in order to get little bits of the open meter. There are some weird platforms here. The tree leaves, when you stand on it, will start to like fade away, in which case you'll end up falling through the platform if you stand on it too long. You have other ones that kind of work like big springs that will end up flying you up into the air when you land on them. Just be careful not to fall down too far so you end up going into the big pit down below. Hanging up near the top of the screen if you can is the best bet so you can get the enemies as soon as they end up spawning and be able to maneuver downwards when things get a little bit tricky. Here you're going to drop into the next little area and you'll start being attacked by those flying missile-like enemies that we've been fighting the entire game. Here, just destroy enough of them until you're able to fill up that open meter and jump in the portal. For the next boss, since we have a lot of meter, this is going to be a very, very simple boss. We're going to stand still on the very bottom and just stay in the center, hold up and just mash the attack button as quick as we can. If you keep doing it fast enough, you'll destroy the boss before he's able to do anything to you. Overall though, the boss will drop little things that you'll have to avoid, of course, while trying to maintain that health up, but as long as you have at least a little bit of power, you should be able to mash enough quickly in order to defeat the boss before he's able to really get going. You'll notice when we make it to the next planet, the first boss that we face is, well, the one we fought in the first level of the game. However, we have to do things a little bit differently this time. When this area starts off, you'll see this weird wave of sand moving back and forth. There are walls on the left and right side that kind of maintain you within this small area, and you have all these jumping fish-like enemies out of the ground itself that you'll have to blast. After defeating enough of these enemies, the boss himself will make his appearance. Here you're going to want to hold the up button and attack as quickly as you can at first. After a few hits, he will kind of bring in his tail and you won't be able to do damage and he'll kind of sweep on through. After enough hits, he will drop, and then immediately 2 more of them are going to make their appearance. Fighting 2 of them at once though makes this battle a heck of a lot tougher, since also the other things are still jumping out of the ground trying to get you as well. Every few hits, or every little bit, they will do that sweeping in attack, and if you can time it right, you can kind of both get them stuck in the loop of doing the sweep through at the same time, and this will benefit you so you only have to dodge once, and then be able to focus on hitting them a few times. You may also want to focus on one more than the other at start, so that you can defeat one and then just focus on the one by itself, or take them out both equally. Either way, once they drop, you'll be able to go through the teleporter and thankfully get 2 power-ups, or a full power-up bar, and then you'll be able to go through the next teleport. Here introduces the worst boss in my opinion in the game, the one that will drive you the most nuts while going through. You'll have to fight this guy multiple times. This weird elephant-like mutant guy, and unfortunately, no, I do not know the names of all the bosses in the game. But this guy, what ends up happening as you're working through his sand labyrinth, he ends up causing little fire stacks to appear in the ground. And every time he summons these and they come out, it can be rather difficult to see them coming ahead of time. They like to also blend in with the color of the armor that our character is wearing. When we make it up here, you want to work your way around back and forth, and then once you make it to the next side, it's time to battle the boss. He'll appear on the right side first, and this will give you a good opportunity to mash the attack button and get a lot of attacks in fast. He'll then disappear after a few seconds and then start summoning the fire. I know the first boss against him made it look really easy, but since he spawns in a really good spot to get a lot of attacks in, this one is very easy to deal with as opposed to the ones we're going to be facing a little bit later on, where they can get a lot tougher. For the next boss, you can't really tell exactly what it is, and you'll see that you're going to be in a very familiar place once the boss battle starts. It's a weird skull-like guy that, after a few seconds, will pop up with a giant body of sand. After hitting a handful of times, you'll be able to destroy the sand pile, and the skull will end up falling back down. He'll then move back and forth, and you'll have to jump over to avoid him, and eventually he'll summon a snake enemy that will start moving around. You'll have to destroy the snake's body and keep attacking the head in order to eventually defeat it, and also keep attacking the giant sand bodies that the skull forms, and eventually he will drop. In this room, you're going to have a few little plants pop up, so you want to use whatever attack you prefer to just destroy them as they do pop up. Of course, you want to make sure you move if they're going to pop up right below you. Take them all out, get that open meter filled, and we'll be able to move on to the next actual level. Since we are still currently on the desert planet, when we start off this one, we're falling through a giant waterfall of sand. Along the way, you're going to end up running into these big dragon guys. Each one you destroy will give you a little bit of your open meter. Trying to get the right placement for you to be able to hit him multiple times is what's key here. Like, I was able to hug the left wall, wait for him to get near me while attacking, and then jump at the last moment so that he goes underneath me and I can land safely and deliver some hits. Here, a little bit tougher to do that. I jump over him and then wait for him to come down from the top, allow me to attack straight up at him, destroying him and being able to collect that meter. As you get farther down after 4 of the dragons from the sand, it will get a little bit tighter of an area that you're going to have to compete with for that final guy. Do the same strat though. Try to lure him and then get him to go underneath you when you jump over him, and just attack upwards. You only need to attack and destroy 5 of them though in order to get enough open so that you can actually go through the portal at the bottom. When you get to the next boss, this time you'll be landing another thing of sand with a giant sand waterfall behind you. Start off by immediately attacking the dragon the guy is riding, and then attack him a few times while he's on the ground. He'll then go into a tornado form and you won't be able to hurt him. When you do jump over the tornado, try only to jump 1 time, that way you can get over it and be able to fall down far enough to deliver a hit to the boss. This is why this part is tricky, as usually you'll end up having to jump twice to avoid all the projectiles. Standing closer to him, you'll be able to jump only 1 time most of the time, if that makes any sense. So your goal, land, jump over him after he does the tornado, and deliver those hits, until eventually he will be destroyed and you can pick up the open meter and go through the portal. The next planet starts off with a tree-like area with a bunch of giant tree lily pads. You're going to have frogs falling from the top, and when they either land or you can actually attack them from below, you want to keep hitting them until they pop, in which case you can get the wonderful glowing orb from inside so you can refill that open meter. There are some power-ups scattered around in case you've lost some of your energy in the previous planet, but once you're able to destroy enough of the frogs, you want to go over to the left side and get to the top so that you can get to the portal. The mini area between these stages, you will have 3 totems that you just have to destroy. Keep attacking them from a distance if you can, and if you jump over anything, they may fire at you. This level is by far my least favorite level, I think, in the entire game. You're on this weird vehicle-like thing that's moving underneath the water, and while you're on it, it moves and hovers up and down, back and forth. The problem is, there's a ceiling above you, and if you're on the top platform as it rises back up, you'll instantly be crushed. The hit detection and how this works is very, very finicky, and you'll find yourself accidentally losing a life sometimes by complete accident. For example, if you cling onto a wall on the left or right sides of the top layer, and just accidentally hit up so you flip on top, you can end up losing a life because the animation to flip up to that top platform takes so much time. Your goal though is to keep destroying the respawning enemies over and over again while avoiding their projectiles. You will be able to get some power-ups, including an extra life like I was there, as well as just other ones to power up your normal attacks. Here is where you want to be the absolute most careful, because this wall is one of those ones, like I mentioned, that if you flip up too early, you'll end up getting crushed immediately. If you go all the way over to the right side, you will end up just being stuck there for a few seconds and the screen will hover back to the left. So overall, the idea is just to stay where you are left of the wall. After it goes back a little bit, it will then finally start to go forward, in which case then you want to go underneath the ceiling onto that top platform and get to that opposite side. Here you'll have more of the same with the turret-like weird enemies popping up and trying to fire projectiles at you, but if you're quick about it, you can prevent them from getting those attacks out. Eventually you will get near the end and you'll see a big torpedo light coming at you, which is actually the boss for the stage. After torpedoing all around for a little bit, it will finally stop allowing you to mash your attack button while staying on that top platform and give a lot of hits to him. He doesn't take too many hits. Thankfully he's a pretty easy boss considering his level is pretty obnoxious. After defeating him, we go through the portal and drop into another one of those abyss levels where we have to deal with one of those elephant guys. Yep, this guy once again makes his appearance and he's just as annoying as ever. It's a little bit harder now to hit him because he can fly above you a lot and you won't be able to hit him directly. So what you'll have to do is either do the hold down and kick in order to do an upwards projectile, or jump in the air and try to deliver 1 or 2 hits when you can. You want to also try to do your best to protect your health as well as your power meter. For the next boss, if you have a lot of power, you want to just stand still where you start. You don't really have to move at all, and you just want to attack straight up as absolutely quick as you possibly can. If you're able to do this, you'll be able to deliver enough hits to the boss to defeat him really quickly and be able to move on to the next area. You will have a rematch against this boss later on. Also, if you aren't able to kill him here, what ends up happening is you have these giant snakes pop out of the ice. If they get you, it's an instant death. They leave a hole behind, and if you fall down the hole, you're in an underwater area and you have to quickly get out of it, and the battle ends up resetting. Definitely one of the more annoying battles if you're unable to kill the boss on the first cycle. We then move on to the final planet of the game. We start off with one of those areas where we're going to have to take out the orange flying things that come at us. When we start off, we're going to head over to the right and try to destroy some of the capsules along here. Standing on this platform is a good area to be in order to avoid the snake-like dragons that we first saw in the desert areas. Do your best to avoid them while attacking also the little flying guys so that you can start collecting a little bit of the open meter. Once it is filled, you want to climb up a little bit and make sure that you get into the portal. The area in between is a pretty empty area when eventually you will get attacked by some of those flying guys. Thankfully though, only one of them is needed to be destroyed in order to get a full open meter. The next level is a scrolling level, similar to the ones we've dealt with before, and this one is scrolling horizontally. You're going to have a lot of enemies coming at you throughout here, the worst being the spinning guys. They stay on a platform and then they end up spinning really quickly and running directly at you, and they take a lot of hits to destroy, and they spin pretty fast, and they're sometimes in tight areas that we'll be seeing a little bit later, and it's really hard, if not impossible, to try to dodge them altogether. During this segment, of course, you're going to want to use the columns in order to jump on one attached to it and then spin around it while avoiding the bug-like enemies. When you make it here, it's going to be really hard to destroy these guys, so what I recommend doing is try to jump over the first one if you can, and then on the other ones just kind of hit one and run all the way through so you don't get hit multiple times. Thankfully, right afterwards though, we are able to get a little bit of power up. You'll have all these flying saucers that are going to be coming towards you with these platforms, and of course you want to jump in between them and not accidentally fall, in which case you'll have to redo the whole level. When you make it to the end though, there is no boss for the stage, and you'll be able to just instantly go into the portal. Next up, you'll be able to replenish some more of that power meter before going into another portal for the next stage. Hopefully you have plenty of health and plenty of power because it's time for the final level of the game. And this level is a very long gauntlet. One of the biggest complaints about the level is the time limit that you're forced to do, and you have to fight a lot of bosses, and because of this, time is a big factor in completing. Having a good amount of power going into this boss is the key. Here is a rematch against that guy we fought with the weird dragon in the ice area. He flies around, he does have 2 different projectiles. He shoots them out, and then those 2 projectiles explode into 2 more projectiles each. What you want to do is just let him fly above you and keep doing the down kick move. Having that move go diagonally upwards into the enemies, you'll be able to deliver those hits. And remember with this boss, if you do not see a flash from him, it means you did not actually hit him. Only when a boss flashes does it mean you actually did damage. Quickly travel through the next chamber, and when you arrive here, you'll be rematching against the guy who uses the giant mace ball, the second boss of the game. When he does his swing move, you want to jump over him to the other side, and when he does land, you want to be sure to be ready to jump in case he launches the mace ball immediately back at you. Thankfully, this is probably the easiest part of the boss gauntlet. You want to wait a few seconds for the jellyfish-like enemy to appear so you can jump on top of it and then get above it. If you try to jump in the hole down below, you end up just losing a life. And now it's time for the worst part of this level, 2 of the teleporting and reappearing elephant guys. Yep, in which case they can summon upwards of 8 fire towers at one time, covering a pretty large amount of the screen. You want to try to conserve your health, of course, since you have more to go after this, and this is easily the most difficult part of the stage, in my opinion much tougher than even the final boss. Once you're able to destroy one, you can then focus on the other one. Here I'm able to just stand on the platform for a second as he hovers over me so I can get that hit in. It's really difficult, and this is probably the part you will end up losing the most amount of lives, and losing a life in this game is so crucial since you'll end up losing all of your power meter. Once they are both destroyed, you want to go through the opening on the right and get ready to battle the final boss of the game. When the boss battle begins, the giant monster absorbs Troy, and you want to stand still and just keep attacking for a few seconds until he stops, and then you want to do a backwards flip jump. If you time it right, you can get in between all his projectiles. Then land and keep mashing the attack button, and if you have enough power, you can defeat him before he's able to attack again. For the final form, what you want to do is climb up the right wall and jump on top of the hand, and then just do jumps up into the air and deliver some hits. If you can't do the jump with some enemies above you, you want to just do the downwards up kick with the diagonal direction right into the boss's head, and after only a handful of hits, you'll be able to drop him and enjoy the ending. I always found it interesting that Street Fighter 2010 doesn't actually have a credit screen, instead just showing the ending and then blasting up into space. Overall though, it's a very interesting title. It has some unique elements to it, and being a Capcom game, it's still pretty fun. Some of the worst aspects, of course, involve the overall difficulty of the game, especially when it comes to that final level. Losing a life during the course of the final stage is pretty much a death sentence. It's very hard to build up your power-ups without taking any damage from the other enemies until you're able to get to that final boss. Having 2 or 3 power going into the final boss, though, will make the battle a heck of a lot easier. But with that, it's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.